Hello and welcome to the Critical Breakdown, the podcast where we start at the bottom of Rotten Tomatoes and work our way to 100% fresh. I'm Max.
I'm Scott, and today we're talking The Witch, rated 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Max's choice for our 91% movie.
Yes, and I like to...
Or the Witch, whatever you like to say.
I was about to say, I'd like to point out this is maybe the first time you've not gone straight to the Vavitch instead of the Witch.
I mean, I know, what it is, but,
You just like to have some fun.
I like to mix it up sometimes. Plus, the V is an underutilized letter in our language. Don't get me started on the letter V.
Well, here's some early show trivia for you guys, all those listeners out there. The reason this film is stylized as the Vavitch on the text on the cover and the poster and stuff is because the W in this time period that the movie set in was very underused then, and most people just would do two V's.
Wow. The times they are changing, now.
Yeah.
You could read page after page and you'd be lucky to find a V.
It's, it's trends. Letters trend sometimes.
Yeah. And it'll make a comeback, for sure.
We're rooting for you, V.
Yeah, for sure. Max, been watching anything fun or interesting?
Both, actually.
Cool. I love that.
Which do you want?
Fun.
Fun? Okay. I watched Girls Trip.
Oh, okay.
And it was really, really good, actually.
It was fun.
It was very fun. It's honestly one of the most fun movies I've seen in a long time.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's a great comedy. It's very funny. The cast is really solid. I had heard nothing but great stuff about it because it was a huge financial hit for the budget.
Oh yeah.
It was a dirt cheap budget, really, and it's carried by the relationship and charisma of the four leads, as well as the characterization. It's actually a longer comedy. It's about 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like that. And the characters are all unique, and they feel like an actual person. They're all relatable to a degree. And
sounds nice.
So, it's like me as a 30-something Latino dude was here, feeling all these four black women's pains. It's just written that well. So, my favorite character in it is someone who I've just really grown to like this past year, which is Tiffany Haddish or Tiffany Haddish. I forget how you say it. She's really, really good in this. She's really funny.
Yeah, she got a lot of acclaim for the role. I just haven't gotten around to watching it yet.
Yeah. It's on HBO, so that's where I caught it. I definitely recommend it. Jody actually fell asleep the first night just because I started it late. I started it late, but I stayed awake laughing the entire time. And then the next morning I was like, hey, let's finish watching it for you because you fell asleep about 30 minutes in. So then I just watched it again the second day. So
there you go. That's a good review right there.
I've seen it twice since the last
in 24 hours.
But yeah, definitely watch it. It's funny, man. It's a really good comedy.
Yeah, I'll when I'm in the mood for a good comedy, I'll throw it on. I did watch an HBO streaming movie as well, but this one was probably under 2 hours, but it felt like it was 5 hours.
Was it fun?
It was not fun. It actually was kind of fun. It was The Book of Henry.
Oof.
Did it come out in 2017 or 2016? I can't even remember now.
I think it was 2017. Yeah, it's 2017.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
He tried to make it for a long time, though.
Well, I get the pushback he got over the years in making it because I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's based on a book in real life, the Book of Real Life, but it's just not very good. The whole premise of it is pretty ridiculous, and the writing is awful. And it was directed by Colin Trevorrow, and right after it came out is when it was announced that he wasn't doing episode 9 anymore. And if there is a tie there, then I'm not surprised because the movie's pretty nonsensical. But the fun of it comes from how ridiculous it is at times. Within the first 10 minutes, there's a scene where an 11-year-old is doing stock trading on a payphone outside his public elementary school, which a lot of that is weird. A lot of what I just said.
That whole sentence is strange.
Is weird at an elementary school, but it's just what I found the most fun was Naomi Watts playing the mother, but she's just a terrible mom the whole time. She's loving, but she brings all the bills to Henry, and who's the genius 11-year-old, and she's playing video games, and then he has a brain tumor and he's in the hospital, and the doctor's like, we need to do surgery, and she's like, I can't sign off on it until I talk to Henry, and Henry's having a seizure. And it's just be an adult. it's not just like make a decision. You have to. But as infuriating as it was at times, I did have my fair share of laughter. So you know what? All things considered, maybe I'm being a little too harsh on it. But
I mean,
it deals with like very, very serious subject matter in a way that is not like respecting it or compelling. Like it deals with like child abuse.
You're not alone in the reactions you've had, obviously. There's a lot of there was a lot. I mean, it's a 20% of Rotten Tomatoes, just to give some perspective there. 20% of critics liked it and 80% did not. So
it's like simultaneously heavy-handed while also like not doing anything of note, which is really weird.
That is weird. Usually it's like one or the other. Yeah,
and then like the actual things that could be interesting, like they just like sprint through them. And I don't know. It's just like it's a way. Like, don't watch it. I literally watched it because I wanted to fall asleep, but I was like captivated by its ignorance, and I couldn't really fall asleep. So, you know, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, I have no interest in watching it at all. But I don't know. I that's from all the bad reviews. It's one of those things where I have been influenced by those damn critics. Because it just, every review I've heard of it, even yours, like, it makes me laugh. But if I was not there watching it with you laughing at it at the time, I don't think I'd ever make myself go back to like see this now that you said you saw it and to skip it.
Yeah, I mean, my curiosity just kind of got the best of me because I was the same way. I knew from reading people's reviews that it was a mess and that it was pretty awful. And there's like awful scenes in it that are just really funny. Like Sarah Silverman plays like kind of a drunk waitress, but like she's in love with an 11-year-old, and they kiss on the mouth at one point, which is weird.
That is weird.
And then like Naomi Watts is like really rich because her son has been trading stocks for her, but she also works at this diner with Sarah Silverman. And one of the jokes between Naomi Watts and Sarah Silverman's characters is that they're like, oh yeah, I had to drive my old car because my Maserati's in the shop and stuff like that. But Naomi Watts really is rich. And so like it felt really bad that she would still do all these jokes with Sarah Silverman's character, who was very down on her luck. So that was like troubling. And there was a lot of troubling, like a kid raps at a talent show. That was very troubling, just that they put that in the film. It's just a lot of troubling things.
Yeah, that just sounds strange, honestly.
Yeah, and that's like the whole, like all the pieces just formed just like really strange movie. But
I wonder if we could create a conspiracy theory that like JJ wanted to get back into Star Wars, so somehow he influenced this behind the scenes. This is completely outlandish.
Yeah, no, what he did was he has an alter ego that's an editor, and he was the editor for the Book of Henry, and he made it just a really weird film.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know, dude. I'm just saying, maybe he had some inside dudes. He's a Hollywood insider, so it could happen.
So this is like he after years of Colin Trevorrow trying to get this made, he was like, "We'll make it for you, Colin," and then because he knew it was going to be a turd, so he could get Star Wars again.
Well,
good work, JJ.
Michael Giacchino, however you say it, he did the music, and he's worked with Abrams before.
Have we ever seen the two of them in the same room? I think they might be the same guy.
Speaking of J.J. Abrams,
ooh, nice.
I decided to dip into a little bit of his film history myself. You said
Keep
fun.
going.
You asked me if I watched anything fun and interesting. I watched something that was both fun and interesting too, which is, cue the music, Mission Impossible 3.
Nice.
You and Kara have always talked to me about how good the Mission Impossible series is from like a certain point on. Yeah. And I definitely want to jump into where it gets like amazing good. But I started with 3 because I was like, JJ kind of, you said it yourself, he kind of revamped it before it became like amazing, sure. Added some life to the series. So I wanted to see what JJ brought to the movie. Yeah,
I mean, the first two are like very schlocky and over the top. The second one is the worst reviewed, but like John Woo.
I'll say this one was still over the top at points, but it definitely was more grounded.
Yeah, it's like it's not as like, it's weird to say it's a grounded movie, but it's not as out there, I guess. Like it all feels like human beings that are in a movie still, whereas like Mission Impossible 2 at times doesn't even feel like it's grounded with human beings.
Yeah. I mean, it's a John Woo action film.
Yeah.
It's, you know what you're getting with that, which I'm cool with, but like, you know, that's different.
Yeah.
But the one thing, and we may have touched about this when you revisited it recently.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago.
The one thing, I guess my issue with this film overall, what I didn't care for with it is if I had seen this years ago before I've seen any other JJ movie since then.
Yeah.
Like this movie would legit be, I would like it a lot more. But the problem I have now this far out is I've seen quite a few JJ films, and somebody had pointed this out to me recently, and I don't know if it was you, but they're all kind of the same movie.
Yeah, I mean, he has a very distinctive style. I mean, people make fun of like the lens flare and stuff sometimes, but
it wasn't even like the formalistic like lens flare stuff for me. What I've noticed, and like I said, somebody pointed this out recently, I don't remember who, but you have this like main character who sometimes they're like a jaded person or someone who's been kind of like left behind with the system or overlooked by the system. That one's kind of fuzzy because it kind of fits with like Kirk in both of his Star Treks.
Yeah.
Ray is like, you know, an orphan. Ethan wants to be out of the field he's now training only. But then there's like, you know, the MacGuffin that brings the character in, which is, you know, common film stuff, having a MacGuffin. But it's always like this one's literally almost called like the MacGuffin device. It's what the rabbit foot.
Sure.
And they go out of the way to say at one point, like, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just going to be there. It's the red matter. It's, you know, like the droid / Luke's lightsaber. It's all that stuff. But it's like, I'm fine with that. That's all good. But it kind of just like, is that person learning to like work through their issues that they have with themselves, their hangups, and kind of prove themselves. And it's fine. I mean, I like JJ. I'm not dissing him, but I'm just saying, like, seeing it, I was like, oh, he kind of really has like redone the same formula just in different genres, and I think he's good at it. But what I'm leading to with that is I hope that episode 9 he has a chance to like really be innovative and you know, just tell something new that JJ's never done before.
Yeah, and those tropes are not unique to J.J. Abrams by any means.
No.
It's common storytelling to, like, reluctantly a hero has to go on the hero's journey, and there's an event or items or whatever that kind of drive the action throughout. I mean, those are kind of common.
And
themes,
I think one of the reasons he was so good for bringing back Star Wars was because he understands those kind of conversations in film.
For sure. But I think he does enough around his template, maybe you could say, with each of those individual films that make them all stand on their own and succeed outside of it. Like other films, like Super 8 doesn't really have exactly that kind of structure. I mean, you still have a reluctant protagonist and stuff like that, but I think he does enough to differentiate. And I think with The Force Awakens, it was kind of an interesting spot where whoever was directing it, regardless, the movie was going to have a similar feel, because it was just like, it was that return to Star Wars trilogy films, and there was a lot of pressure, and it's Disney. They wanted to be a little safe probably and just kind of get the ball rolling. So whatever way they sliced that up, it was probably going to end up with a lot of similarities to The Force Awakens. So
yeah, I mean, I like The Force Awakens. I'm fine with it. And I'm not like I said, I'm not trying to diss JJ. It's just like everyone always talks about his mystery box. You know, that's what he uses as the mystery box. And I mean, for sure that's here in this film. But it's just like you know, I want to see him kind of be better than what JJ does. Not better, but break out of that JJ mold that like he gets kind of pinned in, you know? I want to see him I don't know. I just want to see the next Star Wars film that we see in theaters, the next major like saga one. I want to see, you know, just something unique with it, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you always want to see something unique and special.
And I think he has a lot of chops, man. I'm not dissing him. Don't worry about that. I like you, JJ. I know that JJ listens, and he's gonna be really upset if I'm here dissing him, but no, I just it's interesting now. The more I see of his stuff, I can like really pick out that it's his stuff, which means he does have a distinctive voice, which is cool. But
yeah, I mean, he definitely has a distinctive visual style. But I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of his movies, or like the vast majority of his stuff having like any common thread more so than like any other director. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like if I look at like his TV work too, like Lost and Alias and stuff like that, like sure they have things in common, but they're not. It's not like he has one storyboard that he just kind of shuffles the pieces around it, but it always ends up in this one area.
Well, I mean, kind of though, because with Lost, he started it, right?
Yeah, he was the showrunner and everything.
I mean, I know he like wrote a couple episodes and directed a couple, but other than that, I mean, he was more of a producer, right?
Yeah, but I'm under the impression that he was involved from start to finish. Maybe not like with each episode, but as far as like the direction of the series and the overarching story and everything.
Yeah, it's just I know he has a reputation for like starting and jumping off of stuff. Which whatever. I mean, it's Hollywood. Why not? You know, I don't think it's a bad thing that he has kind of like I know some touches that I see in his work, but I definitely think with the series work he's done. I mean, I know he was involved with Fringe at one point. He co-created that and Lost and Alias and Felicity.
Yeah.
But and those seem like they could be pretty different, but there is, I know with Felicity, she like is a person who kind of just spur of the moment decides to change like the life that was kind of like predestined for her and takes off on her own to like prove herself. Alias is kind of all over the place, so I can't really. I've only seen about half of Alias, but I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
but I mean it's a secret agent show, so you can kind of draw some stuff from that. And there is a lot of like the good agency, bad agency, and then it flips it on your head. There's a father who is, you know, like absent because he's bad, but then you find out he might be good. Stuff like that going on. I can't speak to Lost because I've only seen like the first couple episodes, but I mean the first episode very much has the like classic JJ mystery box feel. So. Like, why did this happen?
Maybe I don't understand what mystery box even means.
It's
I thought you meant like a literal item in a movie that is a mystery box.
I mean, it's kind of like what is like. There's a mystery that you know. It's like it's kind of like a MacGuffin itself. He had a TED Talk called The Mystery Box, where he talks about like he's very passionate about. There's a mystery to uncover, but it's not necessarily about what's in the box. It's about like uncovering why it's in the box and all the theory behind it, basically. It kind of gives like an infinite possibility is what he's known for saying.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm just saying like a lot of his projects have that kind of like air of mystery to it.
Okay. So there's not the mystery box is not a literal box in a movie with I just don't understand the concept. I
mean, it's just like a saying like Chekhov's gun, where, you know, there's a gun, but that just means if you show something, you use it. Mystery box is like a movie has a aspect of mystery or a program has an aspect of mystery that.
Okay, I got you.
The mystery drives everything like a MacGuffin, but it's not necessarily. The point isn't to solve the mystery that way. It's like what the mystery means to everyone, kind of. It's like the Pulp Fiction suitcase thing.
Yeah.
So the trunk.
That one could be a literal mystery box too, though.
Yeah, and they can be is the thing. They can be for sure.
Yeah, I'm getting what you're putting down now.
Yeah, watch his TED Talk on it. It's interesting. It's only like 15 minutes or something. But if you like JJ, it's like a good look into his head too. So
sure, yeah.
But once again, I'm not dissing any of this. I'm just saying like he has a distinctive style, and I begin to see it more. But if you want, I mean, it's like the whole Harry Potter, Star Wars thing people were setting out years ago, where you can line it all up to match, but that's because, like you said, a lot of movies do a lot of things the same.
Well, I mean, like, those are kind of both, especially Star Wars, like the classic hero's journey. Since the Odyssey, we've seen those, and all storytelling kind of falls into that. And like, I've read articles before, and people have sent me articles that it's like every movie is one of these 6 things. And when you break any movie down like to its most core and like eliminate anything like different or special or unique that it's doing, like, yes, maybe at its core it's one of these 6 types of movies, you know, but it's such a it's so oversimplifying everything, and there's I mean, I guess there's only so many stories to tell.
I mean, it speaks to the whole conversation of genre, you know, like some films break genre, some match it, but you can usually codify something into genre. Same with any type of media, you know?
Yeah.
Once you boil everything down to like, you know, the very basics, does this make you laugh? It's a comedy. Does this, you know, look to the future. Is it science fiction? Is this scary? Is it a horror film? Like, I mean, yes, but there's a lot more to it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But it's like a common language we have to use to describe things. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, I did enjoy Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah, it's not nearly as good as the next two, in my opinion. Rogue Nation and then Ghost Protocol, which was the most recent one.
Yeah.
It's much worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
But.
Well, moving from the first Mission Impossible, which is like the one I remember the most vividly that I just wasn't crazy about.
Yeah, Brian De Palma, I believe.
Directed. Yeah, I was cool with this. Like I said, I enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, and like the 3 kind of stands apart because it feels totally different than the other ones. Like it has a ton of like shaky cam and it's very chaotic. Whereas Rogue Nation and Ghost Protocol, they certainly have their action scenes and their stunts and their fair share of chaos at times, but like it always feels very composed and sure, like things go out of hand for Ethan and team, but they also are like what I just like is like the making of the movies are very like there's not a ton of shaky cam in those. Like there's not like one of those born on foot chase sequences.
Yeah.
Like it's all very in frame. You can see what's happening, which is nice.
Yeah. That was, I mean, this one itself, I was cool with the action scenes in it. Like it worked well for me. So.
Yeah. After you told me you'd rewatched 3, I went on because they used to all be streaming on Amazon, and I went on to watch, I think, Ghost Protocol again because Fallout comes out sometime in July. But I couldn't. They're not streaming for free anymore on Amazon. So
too bad.
I have to break out the old B-rays, the old Blu-rays.
I said a comment to you the last time we saw a trailer for Fallout, and I'll stand by that. Which this movie kind of explored some, which is if my job is that hard, I think I would just get a new job.
Yeah, for sure.
He seems like he's always having a rough day at work.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the ongoing jokes, and they actually touch on it like in the trailer for Fallout, where it's like every single movie, all Ethan's trying to do is like, or all that happens to Ethan is he gets betrayed by his country, or he needs to betray his country to save the world, or something like that. It's just like constant stuff like that. So that's a really strained workplace environment. I mean, it'd be really tough to thrive in that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would.
Yeah, for sure. You wouldn't. I don't think. I think you'd die. I think that's
what it comes down to.
IMF. What's the IMF? Yeah, their whole thing is their agents are expendable, you know, because they don't build these great relationships. I don't know. Yeah.
There's no retirement plans, I guess.
Well, no, there's only one retirement with a bullet.
Wow.
Yeah, dark.
Well, did you watch anything else, Scott?
Yeah, I watched Brothers, which was like a 2006 maybe drama with Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal, where Tobey Maguire goes to Afghanistan. He's taken as a POW, but they think he's dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jake Gyllenhaal plays his brother and like helps his family out, but then Tobey comes back and there's some drama there. It was okay. I don't even remember why I watched it. And it was fine. It was weird. Like they spent a lot of time on the stuff that I was less interested in. Like Tobey Maguire, while he was captured, they spent a lot of time on like his brother, who was like a prisoner at one point and like kind of like a general screw up. He was like getting his life together and helping Tobe's family out, which like Natalie Portman plays Tobey Maguire's wife and stuff. And they spent a lot of time on that half, which is fine. And then Tobey Maguire gets back and like there's maybe 20 or 30 minutes of that, and then the movie ends. And like that's like the interesting stuff where Tobey Maguire's dealing with the drastic experience he had as a POW, and he had to kill another soldier and stuff like that. And so you want to see all that, and you want to see he's very paranoid about Jake Gyllenhaal because he thinks he's sleeping with his wife and all that.
Yeah.
There's one awesome scene of it, like where Tobey Maguire's acting like carries it, and he's having like a meltdown, and it's great, and then it just kind of ends, and it's like I wanted more of that side explored. So, but it was a fine enough movie.
I remember that one, but then like I forgot about it until you just brought it up.
Yeah, I mean I think it seemed like the kind that wanted like an awards push or something, but I don't think it ever got there, and it's not too surprising. It's well made enough, but it didn't blow me away. So,
yeah. Huh.
I don't know, what can you do? But then we also watched the Witch.
The Witch, yes, our subject for today.
Yeah, no new releases to talk about this week. We've had a few these past couple, so we got a little reprieve.
Yeah, thankfully.
Thankfully. Yeah.
I hate new movies.
Yeah. If they put something out in theaters, I gotta see. Fuck Hollywood.
Yeah, it's all a scam, dude.
Right, man. Max, what's the plot synopsis for The Witch?
A family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good, I like a concise synopsis.
Oh, yeah. What I like about it is it doesn't tell you the actual plot, just kind of like the generic plot.
Yeah, and it means that the movie is focused enough on its core there that you can have a good short synopsis, Oh,
yeah.
So, I like that.
And this movie actually is extremely focused. That's a good way to start talking about it. It's a small scope picture that takes place, like we said, in this colonial time, and you have a very small roster of characters. It's mostly, I mean, really, it's the 3 or 4 family members and those 2 creepy kids.
Sure.
That's who you kind of come in conflict with the most, and then your protagonist obviously is I think it's Thomason.
Yep, that's Anya Taylor-Joy's
Anya Taylor-Joy, and you're basically with her the whole time, as you know that she isn't a witch, but her mom is now convinced she is because their baby gets stolen, and you very much see what happens with the baby and that there is a witch, but you know that it's not Thomason. And so then the rest of the film is her kind of getting, I guess, slowly oppressed under the thumb of her parents' belief system.
It's like her own trial, her own Salem witch trial.
Yeah.
They do very drastic things with her. They lock her in the sheep coop. I don't know what you'd call that, but
goat house. I don't know.
The goat house. Yeah, they do some pretty terrible things to her. They're gonna just ship her off because they thought she was a witch.
Well, and at first her father's kind of on her side, where he's like, I can't prove that she's not a witch. My wife believes this. I don't think she is, but the best solution would be to send her away. He's doing it more as a mercy. And then as the film progresses, he actually kind of falls to the mother's side too. But he's regretful about it still at the same time.
What was funny to me is it felt like the thing that convinced him that Thomason might have been a witch was when the 2 little kids who are 3 years old maybe, they say she's a witch, and then he's like, well, those kids, I gotta believe them.
Yeah.
But it all happened at a very strange scene. So that's kind of getting ahead of things. But like you said, it's basically all the characters in the movie are the family, and the witch, I guess you could say, is one of the characters. But she doesn't exactly does she have any speaking parts?
I don't remember. She might say something to the brother.
Yeah, maybe, but nothing major there.
Yeah.
Just a lot of her role is just generally being simultaneously sinister and in other scenes seductive, and in other scenes just kind of there, and it's enough.
Yeah.
But the whole movie takes place in the wilderness of pre-colonial Massachusetts, basically. The family gets banished or exiled for something. I don't think they went into too much, but the implication was that the family here is super religious, even more so than the rest of the colony that they were with.
Yeah.
I don't think they go into the details of why that they were banished, but they just kind of go out into the wilds and just start life again. And they're growing corn, they're raising sheep. They're not going in the woods. They're doing all this stuff you got to do.
Yeah, living that farm life, Yeah,
and the film was mostly shot with natural light. I was reading, and I don't know what mostly shot means, but I feel like that's always a big talking point.
Yeah.
For a movie,
probably most of the external shots would have been then done with the natural light, but then some of your candlelight and fire scenes at night might have to use supplemental lighting.
Right. But it all kind of sets up this good mood. The camera's always real slow moving, and you always get a good shot of the landscape with everything. And it's not this beautiful vista. It's just the very untouched natural earth that they're in. But it kind of suits the story because the woods have a witch living in them, and they know not to go in the woods because they're creeped out by it. And then they were right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the rules. I think the parents mentioned at one point is don't go in the woods, but they keep doing it. It's kind of like Harry Potter in that sense, where it's a rule, but everyone breaks it.
Yeah, but like even the parents do. Like they're like, oh, don't go in the woods, and then the dad's like, come on, son, let's go to the woods.
Yeah.
Like let's catch our food in the woods.
Like, shit, I guess we gotta go to the woods. But yeah, it's this movie, like you said, has a lot of slow shots, a lot of kind of like resting on things and letting you absorb the visual you're looking at. But I mean, it's a horror film.
Yeah.
But it's like horrifying in the way that it how would you say it? It sets a mood.
It builds a sense of dread.
Yeah.
Like, and like then it builds the sense successfully enough, and it's like unwavering and moving slowly, like crawling towards this inevitability of the witchcraft and something happening to family. You know that that's going to happen. So every moment that like punctuates it is even more magnified because of that.
Yeah, for sure. And
so there's not cheap jump scares, really. That's my biggest problem with horror movies is like something out of nowhere just kind of jumps out at you, and it's like, okay, well, you couldn't really expect that. And here you can kind of expect just about everything that happens. There's only one jump scare for me.
Yeah.
And it's when the dad, towards the end, he gets gored by a goat.
Yeah, by Black Phillip.
Black Phillip, the goat, yeah.
And that's one thing I was going to say was I think that's a jump scare that like you can understand why it's there. It's actually, it plays to the story and kind of works because there's a lot more to the goat than you know until later. But most movies, I mean, most horror movies do kind of rely on cheap jump scares, and it's for somebody, I don't mind that kind of stuff. So for me, it's cool. But I know for people who are like real jumpy and don't prefer the jump scares, like this horror movie probably works a lot better. Also because you're used to horror movies giving you that. And so for it not to give you that the whole time, it's like, okay, well, that's actually kind of cool because it gives you that sense of dread instead.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you say that because the movie wasn't super well received by audiences, I don't think. There's definitely a very vocal group like in favor of the movie because and it's obviously a very well-made movie, but like when you look at its Rotten Tomatoes audience score and stuff, I don't have it written down, but it's definitely one of those movies with the high critic, low audience score. So like mass audiences didn't really respond as well.
Yeah, it's 91 versus 57.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a pretty drastic difference. The ones you usually see that on are another A24 release recently that comes to mind is It Comes at Night, which is another like horror movie that doesn't have a lot of jump scares. That's more psychological than thrilling, maybe would be the way to put it. And that one was very poorly received by audiences, but it got pretty decent reviews. It was in the 80s, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But I remember it got an F for its cinema score after opening weekend, which cinema score is like exit polling of audiences. So it's a pretty good indicator of the people who actually went and saw the movie if they liked it. And to get an F is kind of insane. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. The marketing could have been not as indicative of the final product, which, because I saw It Comes at Night and I thought it was pretty good, but it definitely was marketed poorly. But anyways, just getting at the fact, this is that kind of movie where the surface level isn't necessarily what you're going to get. And so it's a challenge to market, and audiences might not get what they were expecting when they go in.
Yeah, and this one, I think, is it a C- on Cinema Score, The Witch?
I don't have it in front of me, but I would believe that, yeah.
Yeah.
But there again is definitely a contingency of people who just really like it because it's very well made.
Yeah, and I mean I know I've heard a lot of people talk about Cinema Score and that it's more like a marketing kind of in a sense. If you're looking at it,
it's definitely a flawed metric.
Yeah, because the metric itself is like I think they ask people like, did you enjoy this? But it's the way they're asking is, was this what you expected? Kind of.
I think they ask if you enjoyed it, but it becomes a more of a gauge of like, how did it meet people's expectations? Yeah. Because you're polling people who already bought a ticket and watched the movie, which is different than people who are considering going to see the movie. So it is a little different. And like a cinema score should not be taken as the indicator of quality of a movie by any means.
I mean, that goes kind of across the board with all review stuff. Just kind of a sidebar here. Like I said earlier with Rotten Tomatoes, and we've discussed this billions of times, a score on Rotten Tomatoes just shows you how many critics liked or disliked something. So 57% of audiences that aren't critics, they liked this film, and then 43% didn't. So that just gives you like an idea of the audience versus, the critics. 91% liked it. But even then, you could look at the average ratings, and it's still, it's still pretty far, because the average rating for the critics was 7.8 out of 10, and then the average rating, it's weird that they do a 5-point scale here, but 3.2 out of 5. So I mean, there's still like, a good enough jump there where it's like you could tell some of the people were just like, it's okay. But if it's okay, but it's like not your favorite, that could still be marked negative. So you got to look at all these scores together. But Cinema Score plays in where, I mean, a lot of people, I remember a lot when this movie came out, a couple people I know were like, I didn't really like it because I thought it was boring and it wasn't scary. And for me, I'm like, so much more the opposite of that, where I was like, I'm always compelled by this film.
Yeah.
And then
it's like more compelling to me because of that.
And then when I first saw it, like, it scared the living shit out of me, that like final act. And then afterwards I was like, that was amazing. Like, I loved it. But yeah, it's just, I guess if you're really into like jumpy things, like I could see where this would fall flat for somebody.
Yeah, like if somebody was just reading a list of like the best horror movies of 2016 and they say, okay, The Witch is up there, well, I'll watch that one for sure. Oh, it's streaming on Amazon. That's perfect. And then they watch it and they're like, I didn't even get any jump scares. Jigsaw wasn't even in it.
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do with this movie?
Yeah.
Maybe then they're not going to like it. But, I mean, it's definitely not a movie made for anyone or for everyone, excuse me.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to be into the idea of it to see it and really embrace it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What is really interesting about it is it was distributed by A24, which they're now, I mean, they're not a popular distributor, but they're very well known amongst like cinephiles and like serious film fans for distributing like pretty top-notch indie movies. And at this time in 2016, they weren't as big as they are now. Now, like when A24 drops a new trailer, it's always one of the highest watched ones on YouTube, and it's always like very highly upvoted on Reddit and stuff. But this one was, when it came out, actually, it was their biggest release of all time, their biggest opening at 8.8 million. It actually still is their largest opening of all time at 8.8 million. So that's pretty cool. And it's their fourth highest grossing film of all time, behind Lady Bird, Moonlight, and Ex Machina, all of which I believe have won Academy Awards.
Huh.
They at least were nominated. So good company to be in the early days of A24 there.
Yeah.
And it opened with a semi-wide release, a little over 2,000 theaters, which like a full wide release like Star Wars and stuff, those usually, I think now that count is usually like 4,300 theaters. No, I don't think that's right. Oh yeah, 4,300. I was right. I gotta trust my gut. Like a full wide release is over 4,000 theaters, and The Witch opened in a little over 2,000, and it made the 8.8 million. So that's a pretty good success for it, especially on a $4 million budget. And its total domestic run was 25.1 million. And I think it's made good money in rentals and VOD and all that too, because there's been good word of mouth for it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's in the film, just like people who are more film geeky seem to have had a good buzz about it. Like we said, the critics obviously liked it, but then like everyone I know who watches, more like indie type of stuff, and that actually has for me personally, the amount of people I know that like that also like a ton of horror films. There's a good spillover there, but
good overlap.
So yeah, I mean, it seems like the word of mouth and the whole fan buzz is pretty good with it.
For sure.
It's
I mean, you recommended this movie to me a number of times before it even came up for the podcast.
Yeah,
so.
just because I wanted you to see it, because I felt like the horror aspect of it worked better for you than a lot of other stuff. But then also just like I think it's awesome. So I really like that it has a feel to it. Like it very much from the moment you start watching it, you can tell that like this is a movie it's a whole picture. It's a whole piece of art to itself. So the music works with it. The aesthetic is all there. I believe the dialogue's like period accurate, which sometimes is distracting because you're like, what the hell does that mean? And it takes a second. But and sometimes it's literally hard to understand them. But you can usually pick out enough words to make the gist of what they're saying. And then also like their references to like religion, they reference it in a way where it affects every moment of their life. You know, like for us, life is a lot more secular, so it's interesting to see that. And then the houses, I believe they had to find a place out in like Canada that looked more like New England during this time, so like just some secluded land. And then they had to build the houses from scratch because those kind of houses just literally don't exist anymore.
It's weird that they can't find like a 1600s abandoned farmhouse to.
Well, I guess, and from what I was reading, wood wouldn't last that long, so you always have to worry about that. And these were mostly wood and stone, but then a lot of the original, like New England, Plymouth type of places got turned into actual stone buildings because those became like the first cities in America. A lot of them just were like small villages, and then boom, you know, all of a sudden they're cities made of stone, and then all of a sudden now they're like the middle of, you know, a downtown metro area. So in order to get it, like even if they found one that still survived, it's probably so heavily modified that it wouldn't even matter. So they built them by scratch using like all the right tools and stuff you would use at the time, which is crazy. But they also
it looked authentic enough.
Yeah, I mean, and the clothes too. Like the clothes, they also had they used, I think, only the materials that could be used at the time to make the clothes. So
rough spun wool.
rough spun wool, maybe a little bit of cotton. Maybe. But which is funny because I think we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. We've definitely talked about it ourselves. So there's some shitty new Robin Hood trailer that came out recently. And the costumes are so bad, and you could see like sewing machine stitching in the trailer on the costumes. And it just looks like people leaving like the mall to go play Robin Hood. And sure,
it's like when you go to the Renaissance Fair and you don't have a costume, that's the one you buy there.
It's just, I mean, that's fine if that's your movie. Like people do that all the time. You know, like we've talked about the one with Heath Ledger that we love.
A Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale. They mix in some modern with some old, you know. You can do it, but I feel like it has to be more in your face and you have to embrace it. And here, they obviously go the opposite way, where it is in your face in the way that they embrace it, but it's organic too. Like it's, you know, it has to be this like low-key, realistic feeling to sell the whole theme, to make you fear witchcraft, because if not, you're just gonna be like, that's not that scary. But
and it won't feel real. It won't feel like it's of the time.
Yeah, exactly. So to set the whole theme and tone, I think this movie is just like great at that. Like it just does a really good job at establishing everything you need to buy in. And then once you buy in, it's like it's easy to watch it because you're like, oh shit, like what's going to happen? Oh shit, you know?
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say it's easy to watch.
Well, I mean, it's easy to follow, like to let yourself watch it basically. Like you're not stopping and saying,
you accept everything that's happening because you're in that space.
Yeah, and you're not stopping to say like witches aren't real. Like this isn't witchcraft. Like you're like, oh shit, like that. You start getting worried about a bunny. You know, like a hair shows up and you start freaking out because like, why is there a hair there? It's the woods. Of course, there's a hair there, but there's a hair there. So now it's like, it's literally frightening that there's a hair there. So
apparently, the hair, the rabbit, that like in those days really did signify some type of spiritual or witchcraft sort of thing. Like I don't fully understand the reasoning, but that animal was considered like a sign of like spirits and stuff. So
yeah,
I thought that was kind of interesting. You don't think of that, you know, you just think of them racing turtles. That's all they've done.
That's what we've turned them into. And a lot of this film draws on those old like superstitions and stuff. It does a good job of doing that. Apparently they put a ton of research in there. The writer and director, who we have not named yet, Robert Eggers.
This was his debut, by the way. His feature-length writing and directing debut.
Yeah, he had done some short films, and apparently he's since childhood he's been obsessed with like fascinated with witches, and but he
it shows.
Yeah, and he apparently had pitched some movies that were too weird and obscure, so he would have to make it more conventional, whatever he makes. And so I guess by the time he pitched this one, he was like, I want it to be a genre film, but I also want it to be like a personal story, and I want it to be like historic. And so he worked, I think, extensively with both British and American museums and a lot of experts to like craft the actual story with like things that matter to the people of the time period. So
yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. This is a time period like I feel like all you hear about is like the Salem witch trials for like back then. Like in history, you heard about the Mayflower, and then it just like kind of skips to Salem.
Yeah.
And this takes place, if I was reading correctly, like 60 to 70 years before the Salem witch trials. So like witchcraft was still like a thing that was on everybody's minds, but like just the organization of colonial America at that time wasn't enough to have official trials and crap like that.
Yeah.
So like they would just lock their daughters in goat houses. Like that was the witch trial that you got.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super cool time period to dive into. You mentioned the dialogue being a challenge at times, and it is legitimately just to understand. And I mean, if I lived in 1660 or whenever this took place, I would probably be asking people to repeat themselves a lot because I legitimately, like, some things I would just be like, what? Like, could you clear that up? And it didn't help that the father, played by Ralph Ineson, I believe is how it's pronounced, he has an incredibly deep voice, like the deepest of all time. And that mixed with the dialogue, which is like pretty much Old English, and it being like pretty rapid, like they're not taking their time, they're just like talking like they would. It became, for his character specifically, became a challenge. I could always pick up the gist of what he was saying, but a lot of the details, I'm sure, were lost on me.
Yeah. I mean, that's something to account for sure.
Yeah. And Ralph Ineson, by the way, just had maybe his biggest role to date. He played the uncle in Ready Player One. He was like a shitty uncle.
Was he in Game of Thrones before?
Yeah, but I think his role was like relatively minor in Game of Thrones. Like Kate Dickie, who plays the mother in this, named Catherine, she played Liza Aaron. Lisa Aaron. I don't remember how it's pronounced in the show, but and that's a pretty main role. It's not a main role, but it's a bigger role.
It's an important role, basically.
Yeah, for sure. But he was in Game of Thrones for a spell.
Yeah, and the talent's good in this. Like you said, there is that issue kind of figuring out what the writing necessarily had them saying, but their performances I thought were pretty solid.
For sure. This was Anya Taylor-Joy's debut as well.
Yeah, and I think
she's good. She's obviously big now.
She sent in like that was the first and only audition tape he saw for this movie, and he was like, "Yeah, she gets it."
Yeah, and I mean, she looks alien enough that like I can get thinking that she's a witch. You know, she has those like big wide set eyes, and I mean, she's very pretty. Obviously, I'm not trying to like insult her, but she definitely has a unique look to her, and she's obviously like an A-list star now.
Yeah, and I mean, she's a talent, so it's good to see that, and she definitely shows. I mean, she's great in this movie. Like, you identify with her. You sympathize with her. You're scared with her. She has like a wonderful reaction face to stuff because those giant eyes.
Yeah, she really does.
I mean, it's just all the pieces for me specifically like come together to make this great. I do fully recognize what you're saying with the dialogue because that can be annoying. That was like one of my biggest complaints with Dunkirk, but that's more because the volume and the leveling just wasn't great.
That was like a mixing thing. Yeah. This one, like you could hear everything. It was just like it's borderline another language. Like it's pretty far away from the English we speak now.
Yeah, and that's legitimately true. Like it's an older version of English, so it is definitely different. And you kind of run that risk when you make movies like this and want to stick very true to it. Typically, if you're gonna do that and do like a foreign language completely, you subtitle it. Sometimes people don't, but typically you do. And this, I don't think subtitles would have necessarily. I mean,
no, it would have taken away from. Like, I personally don't even like watching movies with subtitles because I'm reading the subtitles. I'm not getting the whole screen. Like when you make a movie, you're not like, okay, and the subtitles will go here, so let's frame it this way.
Yeah.
So it takes away from the experience for me, and it wouldn't have helped. Well, it maybe would have helped me understand a few of the lines that I missed that I thought might have been important, but it wasn't enough for me to wish we had watched with subtitles or anything.
Yeah.
For me, I was actually most impressed by the kid. Harvey Scrimshaw is his name, which is good. It honestly sounds a little made up, but he plays Caleb.
We've had a D&D character named something close to that before.
Yeah, Scrimshaw Whalebones. Yeah. Which is a little more on the nose, but he plays Caleb, who is like abducted by the witch at one point, and then he comes back, and they're not doing an exorcism for him, but he has a long sequence where he's like kind of the main focus, where he's like speaking in tongues, he's chanting like religious sayings, he vomits an apple, a whole apple, covered in blood, like where he is the main part of the scene, and it was very impressive.
Yeah, he did a good job.
And I'm always kind of blown away by child actors who can do well like that. And he hasn't really been in anything else. So
yeah, no, he really hasn't.
Yeah.
What did you think of the portions that included him, like kind of obviously fighting these feelings, but as she's the only girl anywhere around, having like sexual attraction towards his sister?
Yeah, I mean, it was uncomfortable to see, but like at the same time, it's such a different time, and there's literally not another like female of age nearby. So, and it's not like he's like groping her or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But, like,
he's
like
also
those,
ashamed
like,
of it.
Illicit peaks, that he is ashamed of. And, it was their relationship was kind of interesting too, because like it felt like he was very protective of her, and that stuff might have been part of it, like the whole attraction or whatever. But,
I did think like it kind of does set that this is a different world, because it forces you to stop and think about that. Because growing up in our day and age, you could watch TV and just see a hot girl, and so that's no problem.
And you're damn Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah. So it's just like seeing it through that perspective, where it's like, okay, I mean, he's fighting a natural feeling, and he's kind of confronted with this thing that he knows is wrong and he doesn't actually like and like want to do, but it leads him into the next portion, which we need to discuss anyway, the more supernatural elements of the story. But it's one of the reasons he's drawn into the actual witch in the movie, is because by the time we see her for the second time, because there's a first introduction, but by the time we see her the second time, she's very attractive. Yeah, she's young and beautiful. She's played by, I believe, British model who has not acted in anything else. I forget her name off the top of my head, but the first scene when she abducts the baby, it's fucking disgusting, man. Yeah. She literally like crushes the baby up. It looks like she was gonna like fuck the baby or something, which was very strange. This is like 10 minutes into the movie. But then, luckily, she didn't have sex with a baby. She just crushed it in like a butter churn. A giant like mortar and pestle thing. Yeah. Oh my God, it was disgusting. She did something else too. I don't remember what though. It would have been less terrible to watch had they not done the squelching noise the whole time. It's like squelching. The noise, I'm like about to gag just thinking about it. And it's rough. It's rough to see. I remember the first time I was like, they did not just show that, but they did. So then also what's good with that is it's in the first 10 minutes, like you said. Yeah, so it's a tone setter. Yeah, and it disorients you a bit, and so you're convinced it's going to be gross out stuff like that the entire time, and then you really don't see too much until the brother shows up, and then from there it's kind of like everything's devolving very rapidly. So yeah, and when the brother shows up, it's the young and beautiful witch, and she's just kind of like poking out and like calling to him, and he walks up to her, and then like she like kisses him, and then her hand like grabs the back of his head, and it's like an old lady hand, paw, like a foot, like. It wasn't even just an old lady hand. It was like a disgusting, which was very scary. Yeah, and it's good duality too. Obviously it's there to represent something. Now he has Eggers has gone on record to say that he intended this film to be like a face value story. Like you take it at face value. It's not really designed to have deeper meanings, which my wife loves trying to find deeper meanings in everything we watch. So she was like, spilled blood, that's a period. Like when I first saw it, I just said it aloud as a joke, and then she kept like repeating it. Oh, yeah. And I was like, could it actually be like a... Yeah, and it's funny because this kind of film you feel like is the type of thing that will have that deep second meaning to it. And it doesn't really necessarily, but he said, if you find some stuff, I mean, there's always hints of something in there, but it's not intended to be that. No, like it's not the kind of movie that's supposed to have like mystery about if there's a witch or not. Yeah. They could have done it like that, and they would have filmed it differently. Like they wouldn't have shown like the witch doing like very specific things. Like you could even keep the young witch scene in there, and you could still think maybe it was the kid, like a figment of his wild imagination or something like that. But the fact that they show things so directly just kind of removes that element from it, which is fine. Yeah. The mystery that comes of it is, okay, like there's obviously a witch, but like, is there something else going on to me? I mean, it ends up being Black Phillip, the goat, turns out to, I'm pretty sure just the devil, right? Yeah. It's the devil. You can interpret it maybe as a demon or devil. specifically, but I just see it as like it's Satan basically.
Yeah. And so like that's kind of a mystery throughout. Like they had like Black Phillip does creepy shit the whole time, and like the younger twins are like singing to him and listening to him. They're talking about how he's talking to them, and you think it might just be kids, but then he has that one like weird freak out scene where he's like charging at people and they have to like turn him around, and and then he kills the dad, and
yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. And then at the end you have Anya Taylor-Joy. She got out of the goat house.
And then her mom attacks her after her dad's attacked because her mom blames her. And she has to like fight off her mom basically, and then has to kill her mom because her mom's gonna kill her, like literally.
Yeah, so she has to stab her mama.
Yeah, and so obviously it's like kind of a rough thing for her to deal with. So then she just kind of collapses in her house. Everyone's pretty much dead. And I don't know if they show that the brother and sister are for sure dead. I don't remember. But
they after the scene with Caleb where he voms the apple and dies, like they had collapsed in that scene.
But they locked.
I don't know.
I remember they locked all the kids in the goat house towards the end.
That's right. Yeah.
But I don't remember if they survived that when the creepy old lady shows up drinking the blood out of the other goats.
I can't remember either. Actually,
so I'll have to triple check that. But no. Basically, everyone's dead. And then she just kind of sits at the table and kind of gives up. And then I don't remember if she goes back to the goat house.
She falls asleep at that table. And then she goes back to the goat house. And there was like a book, I believe.
Yes. So Black Phillip starts talking to her as a goat and tells her, you know, if you want a better life, you have to sign the book, basically. And they had kept mentioning the Devil's Book throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
But so she was like, I'll sign. Like, you know, screw all this.
There was actually a couple funny lines in there. Like he was whispering to her. One of the lines that I liked was when he whispered to her, "Would you like to live life deliciously?" Yeah. And she's like, "Yeah." Yeah,
because I mean, part of the plot, the major plot here is they literally don't have a harvest because everything's rotten.
Yeah.
So like they've been starving and eating like scraps, basically.
Yeah.
So
plus, like after everybody else in your family is basically killed by, or like a couple layers removed from a supernatural presence, like, you're probably gonna, once you start talking to it, you're probably gonna agree to whatever he's going on about.
You've obviously seen that it has more power than the religion you've been told about the whole time. Not saying I believe that, just saying to this character, it's obviously become like more present to her.
For sure.
So it's interesting to see that turnaround, basically, where it's like, I'll sign, give me the damn pen, like I'll sign. And then so then she's embraced by Satan. He actually becomes a man all of a sudden.
Yeah, and just like walks out of the hut.
Yeah, is like he looks cool, man. He's wearing like,
he's kind of dressed like a musketeer.
Yeah, like very, very fancy dressed, and especially compared to everyone else, it's like, oh wow, like you know, he has a cool beard and long hair, and
it supports the idea that he does live deliciously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. He looked like a snack. So yeah, so she just like strips naked and is like, yeah, you know, cool.
Yeah.
I'm living deliciously now, and then she just walks off, and we see her enter. What was that?
Does Black Phillip or something walk into the woods too, and she's following?
Yeah, he guides her as the goat. So he's back to goat form. But yeah, he guides her into the woods and takes her all the way to where there is a coven of witches, just like dancing naked.
Doing their chants, you know.
Yeah, doing their chants. But it's interesting. She joins them. They welcome her, and then she starts like smiling, very happy, and then floats up to the sky.
We've all been there.
Yeah. She found her place as a witch, I guess.
And then Caleb wakes up, and he was just having a nightmare. And they're fine. The harvest went well. They eat Black Phillip that night for dinner.
Yeah. Turns out it's actually all an experiment from a bunch of college professors.
The Salem prison experiment.
Yeah. No, so that's the whole movie. Yeah.
Yep.
We hit it.
It's pretty tight. Like what's the runtime? I don't have it written down or in front of me, which is embarrassing.
Let's see. It is 93 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, 93 minutes is not a long movie. It's
no.
I mean, it's a good tight film. Like it doesn't linger on anything too long. It has good like momentum throughout. It doesn't like a lot of times period pieces, I feel like they're purposely really long. Maybe that's just like me not having seen great period pieces or remembering weird ones, but I feel like that's just like a trait of them.
Yeah.
And part of it is like setting up the world and all that. And here they don't really need to do all that because they're so secluded and there's so few characters. So the movie's just like really tightly moves through it. I'm obviously on record as not loving horror movies. I liked this movie. It did scare me still. I did have a full body gag, which hasn't happened yet, I don't think, on one of these podcast movies other than maybe Master of Disguise, but for other reasons. But when Caleb like vomits up that apple and like blood drips everywhere, like literally my whole body spasmed.
Yeah.
It was pretty violent and it actually hurt.
You had a very, very visceral response.
Yeah. I thought I was possessed for a second.
Amen.
I was doing the same stuff he was doing.
Yeah. That's a good movie in a sense then.
Yeah,
it's
for
effective.
Real. But no, I mean, it's obviously a well-made movie. I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad it was your pick.
Well, I'm glad we watched it too. I think we've had 2 really good picks for 91% so far.
Yeah, I think even more so we have the results of our poll.
Ooh.
Yeah. The listeners voted, and the choice 91% movie is another excellent film. Paul Thomas Anderson. Oh,
I was just gonna say I love the suspense you were building, but I ruined it.
I'm trying. Paul Thomas Anderson's "There Will Be Blood," starring Daniel Day-Lewis. Paul Dano. We talked about it a little bit last week when we talked about our nominees, but that won another close poll. Came down to just 1 or 2 votes. But thanks everyone for voting in. I'm excited to revisit this one. Like I mentioned the last time, when I watched it, it wasn't a great environment for it, so I don't feel like I probably missed some details and stuff. And I remember this movie and No Country for Old Men came out the same year, and they were like neck and neck for every major award, basically. And then I know No Country for Old Men won Best Picture eventually, but if There Will Be Blood had won, I don't think anybody would have been shocked or upset by that.
Yeah. I'm excited to see this one. I honestly don't remember. I don't think I've seen it. I keep feeling like I have, but I don't think I have, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies of the past, like since like the year 2000. It's one of those prestige films that just, it's like omnipresent in people's minds. I feel like people just like that. I drink your milkshake scene is kind of like it's funny. It's a kind of a funny line and meme, but that always helps a movie stick around, when you got a good memeable scene. But it's got a lot of great talent in it. I'm not surprised it won the polling. It'll be a good viewing. It's a long one. I mean, it's a 3+ hour movie. So.
I got one question for you. Is this our first Daniel Day-Lewis film?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Nice. That's a thing. That's a thing to think about there.
Yeah, it sure is.
You hear that, audience? Think about that.
Yeah, we didn't watch Gangs of New York. We didn't watch Last Mohicans.
If we didn't watch Lincoln, I don't know what would be. What else would be there?
Yeah, this is definitely our first DDL.
Nice.
And it might be our last.
That's true.
I don't think any of these other movies are either nominees or have been selected already for our hundreds. I haven't seen Phantom Thread yet. I would like to see Phantom Thread. I was going to suggest maybe that could be like paired viewing with There Will Be Blood, but There Will Be Blood is quite long.
Yeah, I was going to say we'd have to have like 18 hours to get through all that.
Yeah. There Will Be Blood is it's not as long as I remember. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is still, I thought it was over 4 hours. I thought it was over 3 hours.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We can handle it though.
Well, I'm excited, Scott.
Yeah. It's gonna be a barrel of laughs. Actually, There Will Be Blood's not gonna be a barrel of laughs, but it's gonna be a lot of fun.
But there will be blood. That's
for sure. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on The Witch, Max?
Just that I really like kind of genre pictures like this, especially if it's like a horror genre with a period piece attached to it that like takes itself very seriously, but is also like accessible. And I think
this might be Max bait.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Like Scoots Bait is like a weird thriller with like an actor that I like, and Max Bait is like a period piece with like genre, like a genre period piece. Like you could somehow do like a fantasy, like Christopher Columbus movie, and I bet you'd be all over it.
As long as Columbus is the bad guy, I'm in on that. So.
You'd be like, Christopher Columbus was a ring wraith?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. That sounds like something I'd write. So.
Yeah. Well, if you do, I get co-write credits. So.
Stay tuned next week when Max performs his Christopher Columbus is a ring wraith. Is a ring wraith radio play.
Yeah. Max, where can the good people find us?
You can find us churning baby butter in a cabin in the woods.
God.
Or you can find us at thecriticalbreakdown.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Twitter at BreakdownCast. We're on Instagram. So you can find us all there. You can find me trying to show Scott my new Apple trick. Or you can find me on Twitter at Max Rivera Film. You can find me all over the interwebs. I also, we got everything. So you can find me out there.
Yeah, you can find me staring an angry goat into his goat house, or you can find me at Instagram at breakdown_Scott, on Twitter at breakdown_Scott, on Letterboxd at Stenin2. I should look into changing that so I only have one name, Yeah. We'll see, people. Stay tuned.
We'll keep you updated.
Yeah. Our music is, it's a Jason Brown production.
Mm-hmm. And our art was done by Josh Rivera.
Yep. Wally's the podcast dog.
And we're the podcast boys.